what you lost and what you had. Remember what you lost.
Good morning, Year 8. Okay then, so ready for Friday's English lesson and our lesson where we're going to go really deep into this poem that you've already looked at a bit before. On Monday, you write a full answer about this poem. So this will be a chance to improve how precisely we talk about the language, which means that what we'll do today is spend a bit of time talking about exactly that, the language. Before you get going, then task 1 is to get your book out if you are using a book today, or you can do it on the computer if you want, and then find the definitions for each of these words. That should be pretty straightforward, largely because, for example, you can just find the definition, ding ding ding, from within docs, or of course you can Google it. I quite like Googling it because then you find out some information about the word, the etymology of it, where it came from, pop it in here. Then the interesting part is you then need to use that word in a sentence of your own. Now this is the part that's super important because anyone can find the word on Google, but you need to spend just a few moments thinking, how would I put that new word into a sentence? This will help it to stay in your brain and not just disappear as soon as you move on, because otherwise Google can be our enemy. All the words at the edge of our fingertips, and yet we never quite remember them. So it's really vital that you actually use it. Okay, so go and find all those word definitions and then write them into a sentence of your own before unpausing the video. And we're back. So, you've just found those words, you put them into some lovely sentences. For example, you said, they jostled in their queue to get into the classroom because they were so desperate to start the lesson. On we go, task 2. So I'm going to call these things quotation explosions. You might have come across another English teacher in the past who calls them quotation explosions. This is basically where you take a quote, write it down, and then write some things around it. Well, why is that so important? Well, when you come to write an answer, you know that bit where it says, this word in the quote makes us think of? That bit's so much easier if you have, before that, written out the quote and actually thought about what each of those words makes you think of. Why, when I'm reading this poem, do I feel that it's a terrible thing to be a soldier? Why, when I'm reading this poem, do I get the impression that Siegfried Sassoon hates being at war? All of these questions are quite easy to answer if you've looked at the words and thought, yes, of course, it's because that word is so particularly frightening, or that word makes the tanks seem ungainly and awkward. Alright, so task number 1 is quite straightforward. You just write this out in your book with my annotations as well. So add my annotations into your book as well, and then come back once you've done that. Okay, so you've written that out beautifully in your book with the annotations. At dawn, the beginning of a new day, symbolising hope or a new start. It's good to have thought about what the word dawn means, because at the start of the poem it's quite a almost hopeful atmosphere, the idea of dawn, but it quickly goes bad. The ridge, the edge of a mountain or hill, emerges massed, assembled together, e.g. a church mass, or you might talk about the massed ranks of soldiers, and done. Oh, I see. So whilst the dawn is splendid and full of light, the hill that they're on is grey and brown, not very nice. So it's important that we think about these words, because then if I was writing an answer, I'd be saying, okay, in this poem, he starts the poem by telling us a bit about the landscape to set the mood, and the landscape seems maybe hopeful because it's dawn, but it quickly becomes grey and sad. Okay, now then, let's have a look at another example. For this one, we've annotated the meanings of words and what they make us think of in green. So, to burn slowly. The verb drifting has connotations of gently, softly disseminating smoke. It's not going anywhere particularly fast. And then shroud, cover or conceal. Why has everything started to be hidden? The menacing adjective has connotations of aggression, violence even. So once we've done that, though, we've added in some poetic techniques as well. You'll see that the beginnings of all of these words that are circled, they begin with an S. So that's what we call sibilants. That is when you use sh and s sounds. Often this is done because sometimes it makes us a bit sleepy, other times it can be quite a harsh sound, and so it's probably used to describe something that wants to be made to seem a little uncomfortable or unpleasant. As you'll see here, the idea of the smoke shrouding, covering up the scarred slope. This is a sort of slope that's been worn away, beaten by bullets and bombs. So yeah, these S sounds feel appropriate. And then the personification here of the slope being scarred. War is destroying everything. Even the earth is feeling injured and hurt. So it's important that we get a blend of language and what the words mean, as well as the techniques that the writer is using. Okay, so just copy all of this into your book and then meet me back after you've done it. And on to the next one. You're probably thinking this is pretty easy so far. So, for this one, you're going to do a third quotation explosion, but I have put circles around things for where you're going to find a poetic technique, and I've added language analysis where you want to find the definitions of the words and think about what that means. So for creep, think about, why is this tank creeping along? What does that word make me think of? Or topple, what does that word make me think of if someone's toppling over? Are they steady on their feet, or are they a little bit clumsy? And then the barrage, that's one of the words that you defined earlier. Before thinking, what's this poetic technique? Both of these words are circled and they start with the same letter. What could that be? And finally, this is quite similar to one we had in the previous quote. What's that? It's not real. It might be a metaphor or personification. But what's the effect of that? So just annotate this in your book and then meet me back here. Lovely stuff. So you've got a quotation explosion for 3 quotes now, one of which you've done on your own. You're getting the hang of this. Now then, I want you to annotate this quote. With bombs and guns and shovels and battle gear, men jostle and climb to meet the bristling fire. So there's a listing of battle jargon, and there's even this repeated word and. But I want you to think of the connotations of these words. When you see jostle, what do you think of? Why might that word be interesting? Are they excited to get somewhere? You might jostle in a queue for a sort of free ice cream. Or think about what are the connotations of the word bristling. Now I know I've explained this to a few people in the past, but connotation just means this word makes me think of. So what are the connotations of? What do we think of when we see the word bristling? And do the same thing for fire. What do we think of when we see the word fire? Alright then, off you go, final quotation explosion. Wunderbar. Well done, students. So, moving on to task 3. Now this one's pretty straightforward, not going to require too much thinking, but I want you to now take a picture of the 4 quotation explosions you've got, upload them as an image attachment. If you don't have the technology to do this, just message me and we can sort something out. Okay, other things I'd recommend, make sure you use sort of cam scanner or something so that the pictures are quite easy for me to read. Thank you very much. Okay then, so to put some of the things that we've learned into effect, I want you to just read through the poem again and think about the language features that we could find. So, have a little read through and then think, I want to find an example of each of these from the poem. Some of them, like sibilants, you will remember and recognise that we've actually already annotated in our quotation explosions. So this is why it's helpful to watch the video, is where I explain the answers, they're all here. You just have to choose which box they go into. Yesterday, quite a few people, I don't know if they necessarily noticed the answers that were in the box, but here are all the answers. You just need to put them in the box. So where does bode with bombs go? Well, it could go in 2 boxes, but look at the letters that are highlighted in the middle of the word and think about which one that would go in. Is that listing? Is that metaphor? Is that assonance? Right then, that's your final task. Once you've finished, have a lovely weekend and be ready to write a full answer on this question on Monday.